Grace and peace to you from our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, from God the Creator, and the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen. This is a pretty familiar passage. It appears in several of our Gospels where Jesus sends the 70 out to preach good news. And a few things that may add some depth to this passage for you is that 70 is a very important number in the Bible. It's representative of all of the nations of the world. And so we see early in that passage, Jesus says, I am sending you out to the places I intended to go, but Jesus can't go there anymore. Where we are in the story of Luke, Jesus has set his face towards Jerusalem. He knows he is heading towards his crucifixion. He wants to go to all the nations of the world himself and tell them about what God can do in their lives, but he can't. He has a mission to go to Jerusalem. And so he sends out his disciples to all the nations of the world. And because being a disciple is hard work, he gives his disciples marching orders. Don't take anything with you, not a coat or a bag or an extra pair of shoes. The first thing you say to someone you meet shouldn't be hello. It should be peace be with you. Stay in the same house even when the conversation gets a little uncomfortable because you're talking to strangers. Don't move from house to house until someone kind of jives with you. Stick it out. Cure the sick. Say that the kingdom of God has come near to you. Don't be a picky eater. Eat whatever you are fed. And if someone doesn't dig your message, just shake the dust off your sandals and move along. Don't hold a grudge. Which of these would be the hardest marching order for you to follow? This past week, I sort of put Jesus' command orders into place when I was on vacation. When I travel, I'm sure this is shocking to you. I love to get to know the locals and have long conversations with people I haven't met before. I find that some of my best memories come from getting to know people I would never have met in new places. And perhaps this is just a hangover from my days living in El Salvador and India, but I love to learn the local history of the place where I'm at. That to me is the best part of vacation. So I started thinking about these orders of being sent to a new place to get to know and share the gospel with people I did not know. And even just being a friend to someone is a way we share the gospel. Our kids learned about that at Vacation Bible School the other week. And of all of these instructions, these marching orders Jesus gave us, the one I was the most nervous about this time was the order about not being a picky eater. Last year, we talked about this passage right after we came back from the youth gathering, and I remember the hardest order for me to follow was the don't take anything with you when I had all that luggage I had to lug around for a bunch of teenagers. So it changes based off of the season of your life. I'm not myself an overly picky eater. I'll eat almost anything that I'm not allergic to. But Kevin is a vegetarian. And I had a lot of anxiety about what he would be able to eat as we travel to the middle of nowhere, Ohio, where, as you can imagine, vegetarian dishes don't run really strong. And add to it, I have a little personal backstory of traveling with a really picky eater. And my dad, I promised, I got permission from him to tell you this story. It's not very flattering of him, but he knows this about himself, so it's okay. My dad is a very picky eater. Apparently, he never had rice until he married my mother in his 30s because it was too exotic, white rice. So even when we would go to Burger King or McDonald's, we would have to order a number, like one of those numbered meals, because my dad would get too stressed out ordering things a la carte because it was too complicated. My dad is a very picky eater. And so it's always stressful traveling with him, particularly when we visit my family up in Minnesota. My mom's sister, Peggy, married my Uncle Bobby, who's from New Delhi, India. And when they have family parties and functions, And my Uncle Bobby's family is also there. Half of the food is Americana and the other half is Indian. And my dad has rules about eating. He has to eat meat at every meal or else it's not a meal. He has to have a sufficient amount of carbs, and he will not touch a sub if it's vegetarian. So there have been times when we have gone to my cousin's graduation parties up in Minnesota, and the only sub available was vegetarian, and the only meat option available was Indian. And my father, so rigid about his eating, would leave the party to drive up to the corner to Arby's to get a roast beef sandwich and eat it there and then come back. It was so embarrassing. So needless to say, I entered this vacation with a lot of trepidation about traveling with a vegetarian. If my meat-eating father can't find something to eat at a meal where they serve American food as half of the course options, what am I going to do with a vegetarian in a place that may not have anything to eat? And so this actually happened. We were driving around thinking we would find little shops and restaurants. None of my cell phone was not working. So he had memorized a map in his brain because he's that kind of nerd. And we couldn't really veer off the road because the map was in his head and I couldn't get back with the GPS. And so the only place that we could go to were these little mom and pop places. So, and we drove for like 45 minutes. We're in Freeport, Ohio. All we see are ice cream shops and nothing but ice cream shops. And none of those ice cream shops were like scoops and had anything other than ice cream. And finally, we find a place that's called the Home of the Big Raider. So we go inside, and we sit down, and we open the menu, and everything is covered in meat. It's either wrapped in bacon or covered in ground beef or has chicken mixed into it. And I'm just standing here thinking, even the French fries had some sort of like meat sauce on them. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do about my vegetarian boyfriend? How am I going to feed him? He's going to be like my dad. And instead, Kevin said, oh, here's something for me to eat. And he ordered 3 orders of onion rings. And ate nothing but that. He ate the food that was in front of him. My father would go to a party where he had a plethora of options of macaroni salad and potato salad and pasta salad and regular salad, but because there wasn't a deli meat option available, would leave to go get roast beef, and Kevin made an entire meal out of onion rings. Why is that? Why does Jesus give us this rule about eating what's in front of you, even though you might not like it? Because being with the people in that place is more important than the meal that you're sharing together. The experience of sitting in this little tiny mom and pop meat-centered restaurant in Freeport, Ohio, Kevin got up and talked to all the people. He had this 20-minute conversation with our waitress about what her plans were after she graduated high school. We learned about the flooding that was happening in that area and the roads that were closed, the school levy that didn't pass. We learned all sorts of things about what was happening in the lives of that one particular community because Kevin was willing to eat whatever was in front of him. My dad would leave a party where he knew all of the guests to go to Arby's for 40 minutes so he could have a roast beef sandwich because it was familiar. Jesus gives us this command, all of these commands, because it's okay to be uncomfortable sometimes in order to get to know your neighbor. And if we have any doubt of that, think about how uncomfortable it must have been for God to put on human flesh, for the God of creation who created all that is and all that could ever be to be born as a small child in ancient Palestine just so he could hang out with a bunch of lepers and prostitutes. I'm sure Jesus would have rather eaten from the heavenly banquet, but instead Jesus came down to this earth and ate the meals that his neighbors cooked for him so he could get to know us and love us and be with us. My dad would leave the party to go to a place of comfort. Kevin stepped out of his comfort zone to join a party he didn't even know was happening. That's what Jesus does. That's what we're called to do. These marching orders are less about our own comfort and more about opening ourselves up to understanding what God can teach us in the neighbor we have yet to meet. So think about that list again. Don't take anything with you. Say peace be with you before you even say hello. Stick it out in a conversation even when it gets uncomfortable. Tell someone that the kingdom of God has come near. Don't hold a grudge. Shake the dust off your sandals. Don't be a picky eater. Which is the hardest for you to do in your own mission to be a disciple? What's that one thing you can't let go of because you're more concerned with your own comfort than the possibility of taking part in the party? And imagine for just a minute what our lives would have been like had Jesus opted for comfort over sacrifice. Often when we think of the sacrifice of Christ, we think of the cross, and that's important. But Jesus also sacrificed by living among us as a human. How could our lives be different? How would our lives be different if Jesus wasn't willing to be a little uncomfortable? Jesus' command today is for us to follow in his example, to go out and meet new people, even when it makes us a little uneasy, even when we can't plan our menu. Because that's how we meet the body of Christ and see what God is doing in a place we have yet to discover. Amen. By the way, I like how Barrett's totally into the sermon. I feel like I can't